The enemy within. Imagine this. You're a ruler, sitting on the throne of your own life. The crown is yours, the kingdom is yours, the future is yours. But then, without warning, you are dethroned, not by a foreign invader, not by a rival, but by your own weaker self, staging a coup inside your mind. Every time you hit snooze instead of rising, every time you scroll instead of working, every time you reach for comfort instead of discipline, that coup succeeds. And your weaker self sits on the throne where your stronger self should rule. Machiavelli would call that treason, because he knew the harsh truth. The first throne you must conquer is the one within. The first throne you must rule. Machiavelli wrote about princes, rulers, kings, but beneath his political lessons lies a deeper command. Power begins with self-control. Without it, no empire lasts, no ruler survives, and no individual achieves greatness. Look at your own life. How many times have you betrayed yourself? You vowed to wake early, but the pillow won. You swore to eat clean, but sugar seduced you. You planned to build something meaningful, but distraction conquered your hours. These aren't small mistakes. They are treasons. Each act of surrender is your weaker self overthrowing your kingdom from the inside. The illusion of freedom. Most people pride themselves on doing whatever they feel like. They call it freedom. But Machiavelli would smirk at that lie, because indulgence is not freedom, it's slavery. True freedom is not obeying every impulse. True freedom is commanding your impulses to obey you. The person who cannot resist temptation is not free. He is chained to laziness, to dopamine, to fear. Machiavelli admired leaders who could control their citizens with firm laws. You must become that ruler over yourself. Without discipline, you are not a leader of your life. You're just a captive pretending to be free. Your weaker self, the master manipulator. Your weaker self is cunning. It never screams at you like an enemy. It whispers like a friend. It says, "Rest, you've earned it. Tomorrow will be different. One more won't matter." But every time you listen, you strengthen the traitor. What would Machiavelli advise? He would tell you to treat this weakness as a conspirator. Identify it, expose it, punish it, make an example out of it so it never dares to rise again, because weakness left unpunished always returns stronger. The cost of weakness, history, proves this lesson. Kings have lost empires not to invading armies, but to their own appetites. Leaders have collapsed not because of enemies, but because of scandal, greed, or lust. Your life is no different. Each indulgence you excuse chips away at your fortress. Each time you let comfort win, you hand over your crown. The cost is not just wasted time, it's wasted potential. And worse, the world does not pity the undisciplined. The world consumes them. Modern. Proof of self-betrayal. Look at the modern battlefield. The entrepreneur who spends more time binge-watching than building. The student who dreams big but procrastinates until deadlines crush them. The partner who promises loyalty but breaks under momentary desire. These downfalls aren't about bad luck or lack of talent. They're about losing the war within. And Machiavelli would say they earned their ruin, because rulers who cannot control themselves invite their own destruction. The Machiavellian lens, Machiavelli, praised Cesare Borgia because he was ruthless with traitors, cutting them down before they could undermine his power. Your weakness is no different. It is a traitor inside your court. And if you fail to act with the same ruthlessness, you will lose your kingdom. Softness toward your weaker self is not kindness. It's treason against your future. Everyday warfare. So how does this play out in your daily life? Every alarm you ignore, every workout you skip, every project you abandon, these are not neutral events. They are victories for the enemy within. And just like in politics, every small victory for your opponent leads to bigger ones. But here's the power shift. Every time you resist, every time you rise, every time you finish, you fortify your throne. You prove to yourself and to the world that the ruler is still in power. The first challenge. Here's your first command as ruler. Identify one domain where your weaker self rules you. It could be food, distraction, laziness, or fear. Then today, not tomorrow, strike. Deny that weakness once. Refuse the traitor's whisper. Win one battle. Because Machiavelli would tell you, those who fail to rule themselves will never rule anyone else. But knowing the enemy isn't enough. Identifying weakness is only step one. Step two is enforcing law, imposing order, wielding the whip of discipline, like a ruler who tolerates no rebellion. Because if you do not fear your own standards, you will never obey them. The whip of discipline Machiavelli once asked, "Is it better to be loved or feared?" His answer was brutal. If you cannot be both, it is safer to be feared. Now ask yourself, do you fear your own standards or do you constantly betray them? Because here is the Machiavellian truth. If you do not fear the law you impose upon yourself, then your weaker self will never obey. Discipline is not motivation. Most people misunderstand discipline. They think it's about feeling motivated, about being inspired every morning by some spark of passion. That's weakness disguised as strength. Discipline is not about feelings. Discipline is about commands. It is about obeying the law you set for yourself even when you don't want to, especially when you don't want to. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must enforce laws, not just hope his people will act correctly out of goodwill. In the same way, you cannot hope your weaker self will do the right thing. It won't. You must enforce discipline. Fear versus love turned inward. So how do you enforce it? By using the same principle Machiavelli applied to princes. A ruler who relies only on love will be betrayed, but one who enforces fear of consequences will be obeyed. Turn that inward. You may love your goals, your dreams, your ambitions, but love alone won't stop you from hitting snooze. You need fear of wasting your life, fear of dishonoring yourself, fear of failing the empire you are meant to build. Because when fear enters the picture, excuses vanish. The tyranny of standards. Discipline is tyranny over the weaker self. It is the whip cracking against laziness, indulgence, and procrastination. This does not mean cruelty for cruelty's sake. It means consequences. If you break your own law, there must be punishment. Fail to wake up on time, lose something you value, fail to finish your work, forfeit comfort. Fail to obey your plan, increase tomorrow's burden. Without consequences, your weaker self grows bold. It tests you, it pushes, it takes more ground. With consequences, it fears rebellion. Historical proof. Look at armies that survived against impossible odds. The Spartans at Thermopylae, the Roman legions. What kept them standing? Not love of rules, but fear of breaking them. Discipline held the line when passion would have collapsed. Machiavelli admired armies that were strict with order. He despised mercenaries because they had no discipline, no loyalty, no fear of consequence. And he was right. Mercenaries collapsed under pressure, while disciplined soldiers conquered empires. Now ask yourself, are you running your life like a disciplined legion, or like a lazy mercenary who flees at the first difficulty? Discipline as self-crucifixion. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Discipline will feel like self-crucifixion because it requires you to kill comfort daily. It requires you to deny yourself pleasure now for power later. But Machiavelli never promised comfort. He promised survival. He promised power. And power has always belonged to those willing to suffer more than their enemies. Modern proof. The athlete who trains at dawn when rivals sleep builds an empire of endurance. The entrepreneur who works in silence for years while others party builds a fortress of wealth. The leader who disciplines his tongue, refusing to speak in anger, builds a reputation that commands respect. These victories don't come from motivation, they come from law, ruthless law. Discipline is a crown. Think of discipline as the crown you place upon your own head. Without it, you are just another pawn in the crowd. With it, you are a king in command of yourself. The crown doesn't appear overnight. It is forged, hammered, beaten into shape by repeated acts of self-command. Every morning you rise against comfort, every promise you keep to yourself, every rule you enforce, that crown grows brighter. And one day, others see it. They feel it. They respect it, because discipline radiates power the same way gold radiates wealth. The whip versus the whisper. Your weaker self will always whisper, rest, indulge, give up. The whip of discipline must answer, no, not softly, not occasionally, but ruthlessly, until obedience becomes instinct. Because once discipline becomes instinct, the war is won. You no longer debate with your weaker self. You simply command, and it obeys. The second challenge. Here is your second challenge. Create one law for yourself this week, one clear, non-negotiable command. It might be, wake up at 6 a.m. every day, no exceptions, no sugar for 7 days, write 1 page daily without fail. Then enforce it. No mercy, no excuses. If you fail, punish yourself. If you succeed, reward yourself with respect, not indulgence. Do this, and you'll discover something Machiavelli knew all along. People, including yourself, only respect laws that are enforced. But discipline alone is not enough, because even the most disciplined ruler can be undone if he is controlled by his emotions. The next Machiavellian weapon is colder, sharper, more dangerous, the throne of control, mastering your emotions so they can never be used against you. The cold throne of control. Imagine a ruler who has conquered every rival, built high walls, and commands armies, but loses his temper in public. One fit of rage, one uncontrolled outburst, and his enemies use it against him. His reputation collapses, his kingdom cracks from within. Machiavelli saw this mistake again and again. He wrote that a ruler who cannot control himself will eventually be controlled by others. And that's why the coldest throne you can sit on is the throne of emotional control. Emotions as chains. Most people think emotions make them authentic. They say, I speak my mind, I show how I feel, but Machiavelli would warn them, emotions are chains, and if you wear them openly, manipulators will pull them until you break. Anger makes you predictable. Your rival knows exactly how to provoke you. Desire makes you vulnerable. Anyone who dangles temptation can lead you by the nose. Fear makes you weak. Those who sense it can control you with threats. When your emotions rule you, you are not on the throne. You are the puppet. The puppet masters of today look around. Politicians are destroyed not by lack of talent, but by scandals born of lust or rage. CEOs lose billions because they chase ego instead of reason. Ordinary people sabotage their lives because they cannot resist anger, envy, or impulse. These are not accidents. These are self-coups, the ruler inside them overthrowing himself through emotion. And Machiavelli would say they deserved it, because the enemy who controls your emotions controls your kingdom. Cold control versus suppression. But let's be clear, Machiavelli did not advise suppression in the naive sense. Suppression means burying emotions until they explode later. Cold control means mastering them, holding them in your hand like a blade you only unsheath when the strike is most effective. A ruler may feel anger, but he does not lash out instantly. He waits, plans, and then acts with precision. That is control. The strategy of delay. One of Machiavelli's most overlooked lessons is the strategy of delay. He knew that striking in anger weakens you, but waiting, letting time reveal your enemy's weaknesses, gives you power. The disciplined leader delays his response until the right moment. In an argument, he pauses, letting the opponent overexpose. In business, he waits for rivals to overcommit before making his move. In personal life, he observes instead of reacting, then strikes with calm certainty. The ability to delay is the ultimate display of control. Historical proof. Think of Octavian, who became Augustus, the first Roman emperor. He was not the strongest warrior. He was not the loudest voice, but he was cold, calculating, and patient. While rivals burned themselves out with passion and reckless moves, Octavian waited, watched, and struck only when victory was certain. That's why history remembers him as Augustus the Great, not as another fallen general consumed by rage. Modern applications. Emotional control is not just for emperors, it's for you, here and now. In your career, when a colleague insults you in front of others, your instinct is to snap back. But control means smiling, staying calm, and letting their lack of composure destroy their credibility. In relationships, when someone tries to provoke jealousy, the undisciplined react instantly. The controlled stay silent, projecting unshakable strength. In negotiations, the one who shows desperation loses. The one who stays calm, unreadable, and detached always wins. Control makes you magnetic. People respect what they cannot rattle. The mask of calm. Remember the masks we discussed earlier? The most powerful mask is calmness. Even when storms rage inside, the mask of calm tells the world, I am unshakable. And the world believes it. Because appearances, Machiavelli said, matter more than truth. If you appear calm, people assume you are in control. If you appear emotional, people assume you are weak, no matter what you feel inside. The cost of losing control. Lose control once, and you might lose everything. The angry outburst that ruins years of reputation, the jealous reaction that destroys trust in seconds, the impulsive decision that costs fortunes and opportunities. Machiavelli would call these acts of self-sabotage unforgivable, because rulers cannot afford to bleed in public, and neither can you. The third challenge. So here is your third challenge. Practice the throne of control. This week, choose one emotion you usually lose control over: anger, envy, fear, or desire. The next time it rises, do not act, delay, observe. Let silence and time do their work. Later, when the moment is right, act. Not with passion, but with precision. Do this, and you will feel something rare, the cold calm of a ruler who commands himself, while others remain slaves to their emotions. But control alone is not enough, because there are moments when calm must transform into force, when silence and patience must give way to decisive aggression. That is the next Machiavellian secret: controlled aggression, the blade that inspires fear and commands respect. Controlled aggression and respect. Machiavelli asked one of the most unsettling questions in history. Is it better to be loved or feared? His answer was cold. If you cannot be both, it is safer to be feared. But let's be precise. Machiavelli was not advising rulers to become cruel tyrants, hated by all. He was teaching the power of controlled aggression, the ability to strike with precision at the right moment, not out of anger, but out of strategy. The danger of endless kindness. Let's begin with the opposite. What happens when you are endlessly kind, endlessly forgiving, endlessly soft? At first, people praise you. They call you noble, generous, compassionate. But soon, they learn a darker truth. You will bend, you will yield, you will forgive endlessly. And when they learn this, they stop respecting you. The employee who misses deadlines because they know the boss won't enforce consequences. The friend who disrespects boundaries because they know you'll always forgive. The partner who manipulates emotions because they know you'll tolerate it. Machiavelli understood this pattern well. He wrote that rulers who are too merciful invite chaos because mercy without limits is weakness disguised as virtue. The stability of fear. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine a leader who enforces boundaries, who punishes betrayal, who makes disobedience unthinkable. People may not always like this leader, but they respect him, and respect endures far longer than affection. That's the heart of Machiavelli's teaching. Love is fragile, but fear is stable. And this principle applies not only to kingdoms, but to your daily life. At work, at home, in relationships, people respect what they fear losing. Aggression versus rage. But here is the critical distinction. Machiavelli warned against cruelty for cruelty's sake. Rage destroys more than it builds. Rage is sloppy, uncontrolled, and reckless. Controlled aggression is cold, calculated, and surgical. Controlled aggression doesn't mean striking constantly. It means striking rarely, but so decisively that no one forgets. The shock of decisive action. Cesare Borgia, Machiavelli's favorite example, understood this. When he conquered a rebellious province, he allowed his lieutenant to be cruel and feared. Then, once order was restored, Cesare publicly executed that lieutenant in one swift act. The people were shocked into obedience. They saw both mercy and ruthlessness in one move. They feared disobedience, but they did not hate Cesare. That is controlled aggression, a single unforgettable strike that establishes order, followed by calm restraint. Modern examples. In the workplace, a calm leader who normally speaks softly suddenly calls out sabotage in front of everyone, not with rage, but with precision. The message is clear. Betrayal will not be tolerated. In relationships, someone who usually listens with patience finally walks away in silence after repeated disrespect. That single act commands more respect than endless arguments ever could. In negotiations, the one who refuses an unfair deal and ends the conversation gains more leverage than the one who argues endlessly. People remember decisive moments, and the memory of one sharp act of aggression can prevent countless future betrayals. Respect above popularity. This is the lesson most people never learn. Popularity is cheap. Respect is priceless. The popular boss who tries to be everyone's friend is ignored. The popular partner who tries to please every demand is used. The popular politician who avoids conflict is crushed. Respect may not always bring affection, but it brings obedience, and obedience builds stability. Would you rather be liked by many or respected by all? Machiavelli would call this the most important question of your life. The fire metaphor. Think of controlled aggression like fire. A fire too small goes unnoticed. It brings no warmth, no fear. A fire too large burns out of control. It consumes the one who lit it. But a fire contained, controlled, and released at the right moment, that fire commands respect. That's the balance you must strike. The fourth challenge. So here is your fourth challenge. Identify one area of your life where you have been too soft, too forgiving, too eager to be liked. Then decide on one act of controlled aggression. Not rage, not cruelty. Just one decisive move that makes disrespect or disobedience impossible to ignore. It might be confronting a colleague publicly once. It might be refusing manipulation in silence. It might be ending a toxic relationship without drama. Do it once and watch how people treat you differently. Because as Machiavelli knew, one strike at the right time commands more respect than 1,000 words. But even fear and respect are not enough. because power is not only about the present, it's about what outlives you. The final Machiavellian lesson is legacy, the crown of mastery, the fortress of the mind, the power no one can ever strip away. Legacy and transformation. Fear and respect may secure your power today, but Machiavelli understood something deeper. The ultimate power is not in titles, wealth, or even armies. The ultimate power is in what cannot be taken from you, the throne within, the legacy you build, and the authority you carry long after the crowd has gone silent. Because kingdoms rise and fall, wealth changes hands, friends and followers betray, but the person who rules themselves with iron discipline leaves behind something untouchable, a legacy of strength. The fragility of borrowed power. Most people anchor their identity in fragile things, a job title, a relationship, a reputation, but these are borrowed crowns. Lose the title and the respect vanishes. Lose the relationship and the identity collapses. Lose public approval and the empire falls overnight. Machiavelli saw rulers rise on borrowed power and fall with humiliating speed. Princes who relied on allies were abandoned. Leaders who relied on love were betrayed. Those who built empires on fragile foundations were swept away like sand in the tide. And he saw another kind of ruler, one who built power within, the kind who could lose everything and still command respect, because the authority came not from external trappings, but from internal mastery, the throne within. So what is this inner throne? It is the sum of everything we've explored. Silence, so no one can bait or read you. Masks, so no one can predict you. Focus, so no one can distract you. Detachment, so no one can chain you. Controlled aggression, so no one can disrespect you. These aren't just tactics. Together, they form your throne, and once you sit upon it, you are unshakable. Even if you lose money, status, or allies, you remain a ruler because the true crown sits inside and no one can seize it. The shadow and the flame. Machiavelli admired rulers who embodied two extremes, the shadow and the flame. The shadow is mystery, unreadable, untrackable, untouchable. The flame is presence, decisive, commanding, unforgettable. Most people fail because they live only as one. Too shadowed and they become passive, too fiery and they burn themselves out. But when you become both shadow and flame, you create a power that echoes beyond your presence. Your silence draws curiosity. Your strike inspires fear. Your legacy is remembered long after your words are forgotten. Modern proof. Think of figures who shaped history not only in their time, but for generations after. Marcus Aurelius, who wrote Meditations not for fame, but for control of himself, and left a blueprint for resilience centuries later. Napoleon, who understood appearance and timing so well that his aura lingers even in defeat. Leaders, creators, and thinkers who lived with iron discipline, leaving behind legacies stronger than armies. Their power didn't end when their rule ended. It lived on because they built fortresses inside themselves. Your legacy. The question now is simple. What legacy are you building? Are you crafting a reputation of discipline or one of indulgence? Are you remembered for strength or forgotten for weakness? Are you building a throne within or letting your weaker self rule in your place? Machiavelli taught that fortune is like a violent river, flooding and destroying everything in its path. But the wise ruler builds dams and channels to control its flow. Legacy is your dam. Legacy is what survives the flood. The fifth challenge. Here is your final challenge. Define your legacy today. Not 10 years from now. Not at the end of your life. Today. Write down the words you want people to say when your name is mentioned. Then, every action, every silence, every strike must align with those words. If you want to be remembered as disciplined, then enforce discipline now. If you want to be remembered as untouchable, then control your emotions now. If you want to be remembered as ruthless in truth, then cut weakness now. Legacy is not built later. Legacy is built in every small act of control today. A final question. So I leave you with the question only you can answer. Do you deserve the crown? Have you conquered your weaker self? Have you built a fortress no enemy can breach? Have you claimed the throne within, or are you still waiting for permission from a world that will never give it? Because Machiavelli would tell you this: no one crowns you. You crown yourself. The Ruthless Community. This channel is for those who refuse to live as pawns, for those who dare to see the world as it is, not as they wish it to be. So, if you are ready to continue this path, subscribe to Ruthless Psychology. Join a community that sharpens minds into weapons, turns silence into strength, and transforms ambition into legacy. Here, we do not beg for power, we seize it. We do not fear the truth, we use it. And we never ever yield the throne within. The closing image. So the next time you look in the mirror, don't ask, what do I want? Ask, am I ruling or am I ruled? Because power begins and ends with one truth. The empire outside means nothing if the empire inside has already fallen. That is the Machiavellian path, and now it is yours.